The director of the Pentagon's UFO investigation office recently retired, went public, and dropped some bombs. He says during his time investigating UFOs at the Pentagon, with top secret access to everything, he saw no evidence of aliens flying around our skies. And he says a small group of religious UFO conspiracists have spent years duping Congress with false and deceptive stories. And that supports and validates what I've been reporting at the Post for the last 2 years. In this video, I'm going to share new exclusive comments from Sean Kirkpatrick, a scientist who for the last 18 months was the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. His job was to look for UFOs and try to figure out what they are. He recently resigned from the Pentagon after discovering some unsettling information. I also have new exclusive comments from members of Congress who have also been hunting UFOs. If you want the full backstory with all the gritty details, read my big New York Post article or watch my investigative documentary. Both are linked in the description below. In December 2017, the New York Times front-paged a story about UFOs and a secret Pentagon program that investigated them. Profiled in this story was a guy named Lou Elizondo, who claimed to have run this secret program for the Pentagon for years. Elizondo went on CNN the following day to announce that we may not be alone.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
The story went viral around the world, everywhere. Hundreds, if not thousands, of headlines copied and pasted the story from the New York Times. This obviously captured the attention of Congress, who started asking questions, demanding answers. Officials at the Pentagon held top-secret briefings with members of Congress about UFOs, and a UFO task force was created. But in May 2022, I released a report at the New York Post that exposed the New York Times article as being wrong, false, erroneous, and intentionally deceptive. My report revealed that Lou Elizondo was not the head of a Pentagon UFO program, and in fact, that UFO program didn't even exist. That New York Times article had been co-authored by 2 UFO activists. One of them in particular, Leslie Kean, would later admit that her main goal with that article wasn't necessarily to report the facts, but to give UFOs credibility. Elizondo and Kean were both intimately connected to this small group of UFO and paranormal activists, both inside and outside government. But despite the bombshells revealed in my report, 0% of the other mainstream news media covered this, asked about it, looked into it. They just continued to churn out credulous headlines about UFOs and aliens. And thus, the dominoes just kept falling. In July 2022, bipartisan congressional leaders like Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Marco Rubio helped create a new Pentagon UFO program called the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or aaro. Placed in charge of aaro was a scientist named Sean Kirkpatrick, and there were some who wondered, who is this guy? Is he part of this small group of activists? Or was he independent of this group? In March 2023, I released a lengthy article in the New York Post, again exposing this group of paranormal activists. I found new documented evidence, dug up more leads, connected more dots. And what I discovered was that some of these activists inside government had missed foreign spycraft over American skies for years because they were instead chasing spooky UFOs. They thought what they were seeing was something otherworldly, when in fact, we now know Some of these objects were foreign spycraft. In the wake of the big Chinese spy balloon story, this was a huge revelation, a huge bombshell. But again, the mainstream news media, other than one reporter at the Washington Examiner, doesn't cover it, doesn't pick it up, doesn't ask about it, doesn't look into it. They just keep churning out more and more credulous stories about UFOs. A new piece to all of this that I revealed is how the UFO story is directly connected to a spooky property in Utah called Skinwalker Ranch, which for years has been claimed to be home to UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, monsters of all types. I went out to Skinwalker Ranch and debunked it. There's nothing there. I connected the dots, I put names to faces, and was able to create this family tree of sorts of these activists who, for years and in some cases decades, have been telling the same tall tales in order to get taxpayer money to investigate the paranormal. Again, no one else covers this, no one else picks this up. In June 2023, a U.S. Air Force reservist named David Grusch went public, claiming that the government is in possession of alien spacecraft and alien bodies.
No kidding, non-human, exotic origin, vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
Of course, he says he's never actually seen the aliens himself. He just heard about the aliens from a certain group of people that he trusts. Do you want to guess who this group is? Yes, Grusch is friends with, associates of, and close to many of the same people from this same group of paranormal activists. The same group of people who have been doing this for years now. Lou Elizondo, whose claims I've debunked. Jay Stratton, former Pentagon official / Skinwalker Ranch ghost hunter. Travis Taylor, former Pentagon official, the star of the Skinwalker Ranch show on the History Channel. George Knapp, merchant of all things spooky. Jeremy Corbell, a UFO celebrity who's been caught many times promoting fake and false UFO stories. And the article that revealed David Grusch and his claims to the world was written by the same exact UFO activist that co-authored the false, erroneous, deceptive 2017 New York Times story, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. The media, of course, eats all of this up. They headline all of Grusch's claims. His story goes viral. It's just an alien and UFO fest. And no one is diving into Grusch's association with these dubious characters, this group of activists. Well, except for me at the Post. Which is just crazy because it wasn't like these people were being private and secretive about their association with Grusch. Lou Elizondo tweeted that Grusch was a close associate and a friend. Eric Davis, former Skinwalker Ranch ghost hunter, was on Facebook saying how he and Grusch had known each other for years. Grusch had appeared in public at UFO conventions with the likes of Jay Stratton, Travis Taylor, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell. It's all right there in front of you to anyone who looks, but no one was looking. The next month, July 2023, David Grusch testifies before Congress about the aliens. And again, he says my testimony isn't based on something that I have seen or witnessed myself.
My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals.
My testimony is based on information I was given from a group of people, the same group of people, some of whom were literally sitting right behind him. Of course, Congress isn't aware of all of this. They still think the 2017 New York Times article is legit, is accurate.
A groundbreaking 2017 New York Times report.
Leslie Kean from New York Times article, and I would encourage everybody to read that.
They apparently don't know about this group. They apparently don't know about these relationships and that all of this has been going on. And so Congress continues to move forward looking into David Grusch's allegations because they think maybe the aliens are there. Also in July, Senator Chuck Schumer submitted to Congress new proposed legislation about UFOs. Schumer's far-reaching 64-page proposed legislation included mentions of flying saucers, non-human intelligence, and provided the federal government with new eminent domain powers that would allow them to acquire potential alien spacecraft and alien bodies. Well, guess who reportedly helped Schumer write this new legislation? The legislation was drafted with input from Jay Stratton, Travis Taylor, Luis Elizondo. The most involved with the drafting was David Grusch. The same people from the same group. In December of 2023, Kirkpatrick retired from the Pentagon. Now a private citizen, he was finally able to speak in more detail about what he had discovered during his time as director of aaro. In January of 2024, Kirkpatrick released a scathing op-ed in Scientific American, where he says during his time in his lofty position as the head of the Pentagon's UFO investigation office, he says he never saw any evidence that any UFOs are alien. But more importantly, he finally said what I've been reporting for years, that all of the wild and crazy claims that Congress has heard over the last 6 years all go back to the same group of paranormal activists. Kirkpatrick says during his 18 months as the head of aaro, he tried to approach the issue from a scientific point of view, but says, quote, "Our efforts were ultimately overwhelmed by sensational but unsupported claims that ignored contradictory evidence, yet captured the attention of policymakers and the public, driving legislative battles and dominating the public narrative." He says the key purveyors of this narrative have known one another for decades. A group of individuals associated with businessman and longtime ufologist Robert Bigelow. Taxpayer money was being inappropriately spent on paranormal research at Skinwalker Ranch. If you've read my reporting or watched my investigative documentaries, you know about Robert Bigelow and Skinwalker Ranch. Kirkpatrick also did a podcast with CNN's Peter Bergen, in which he continued to emphasize that a, quote, core group of people are the ones that have been pushing all this. They're some of the same people that have been working behind the scenes with Congress to write legislation. They're the same people that have been influencing some of these whistleblowers that have come forward. Kirkpatrick declined to actually name anyone in this group, and he says his final report that he wrote as head of aaro will be delivered to the public and Congress soon. He says more details will be revealed. But he did agree with Peter Bergen when he said that the actual conspiracy is being carried out by a group of true believers to get the government involved in the business of investigating aliens. The best thing that could have happened in this job is I found the aliens, and I could have rolled them out, but there's none. There is no evidence of extraterrestrials. There is no evidence of aliens. But Kirkpatrick says none of that will probably convince the UFO true believers. There is absolutely nothing that I'm going to do, say, or produce evidentially that is going to make the true believers convert. It's basically a religion, a religious belief that transcends critical thinking and rational thought. So the guy who was at the top of all of this at the Pentagon is saying that a UFO religion has infiltrated the United States government, has infiltrated the United States Congress. Why aren't more people talking about this? Kirkpatrick's op-ed and podcast sent shockwaves through the UFO community. Many UFO activists are accusing Kirkpatrick as being part of a conspiracy to cover up aliens. But it gets weirder than that. In Kirkpatrick's op-ed, as he's outlining his case, his article links to outside third-party supportive articles. One of the links, where he's talking about how this group is connected to Skinwalker Ranch, links to my March 2023 New York Post article. This, of course, started a whole explosion of online conspiracy theories. UFO activists were suddenly claiming that this link to my story proved that I was in cahoots with Sean Kirkpatrick, and that Kirkpatrick and Stephen Greenstreet had been working together nefariously behind the scenes. There are accusations all over social media that I am a government plant, a CIA agent, a man in black, a whole bunch of crazy stuff. The truth is, while Kirkpatrick was at the Pentagon, I requested comment from him multiple times. I was denied every time. I requested an interview with him. I was denied every time. The first time I was actually able to communicate with Sean Kirkpatrick was after his op-ed. He replied to one of my emails in which I was asking, "Hey, I noticed you linked to my article, so I assume you're familiar with my reporting." Kirkpatrick responded, "My apologies, but I have not read your work. The links were included by Scientific American to point to other reporting and is not meant to be either an endorsement or represent my agreement. I appreciate your interest, but I am not taking more interviews until after my report is delivered to Congress." So Kirkpatrick apparently hasn't read my reporting, but he's apparently come to the same conclusions as my reporting. No evidence of aliens, and a group of activists telling tall tales to Congress. UFO believers, however, are angry.
Kirkpatrick is a piece of dog.
They still, right now, as I speak, are posting wild, outrageous conspiracy theories all over social media. One religious UFO believer said that Kirkpatrick and I should be tried for treason and executed. That may sound like the rantings of a random crazy person, but many UFO activists, some of them with large followings, are using violent and warlike language in their fanatical UFO call to arms. Jeremy Corbell, for example, a largely popular UFO celebrity who plays a major role in influencing members of Congress, and who the news media uncritically platforms sometimes every day, has tweeted that this is a war, a UFO Vietnam, that his followers should get mad, rage, and weaponize. And he says that he won't stop fighting for UFOs until the bodies hit the floor. And he warns UFO debunkers to beware.
Beware. Debunkers, beware. Because this information is coming out. This is the tip of the spear. But I ain't stopping until I see the bodies hit the floor.
This is disturbing and unsettling stuff. Unhinged, wacky stuff that used to be reserved for the dark corners of the internet or conspiracy blogs. But here it is, front and center on mainstream news channels, platformed with little to no pushback, inquiry, or proper critique. Corbell was on TV yesterday. He'll probably be on TV tomorrow.
Joining us now, my friend Jeremy Corbell, friend of the show.
This is like the Twilight Zone. Well, I thought I'd reach out to Congress and ask them if they think they've been duped by a religious UFO group. I reached out to Marco Rubio and Kirsten Gillibrand, who both spearheaded the creation of aaro, the Pentagon's UFO office. I'd previously reached out to Senator Gillibrand multiple times over the last 18 months, and all of my previous inquiries to Gillibrand were ignored. This time, I asked the senator to specifically respond to Kirkpatrick's comments about a group of conspiracists who have been duping Congress. For the first time ever, she actually replied to me with a boilerplate non-answer about how important aaro is. She did not even acknowledge Kirkpatrick's comments. My follow-up emails were ignored. A link to her full comment is in the description below. Gillibrand had actually met with some of the members of this UFO activist group, who were lobbying her to create a government UFO department. After aaro was created, activists Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo tweeted a photo of themselves posing with Gillibrand, saying, "Glad we got this done." Marco Rubio, despite multiple emails and phone calls from me, did not respond to my inquiry. But Rubio seems to have already been distancing himself from this UFO hysteria. In June, he said this: "Either what David Grusch is saying is partially true, or entirely true, or we have some really smart, educated people with high clearances and very important positions in our government who are crazy and are leading us on a goose chase." Yeah. I then reached out to most of the members of the so-called Congressional UFO Caucus. Leaders like Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, Jared Moskowitz, Eric Burlinson, and Andy Ogles. Luna and Moskowitz did not respond to my multiple requests for comment. Burleson replied, but did not answer my question, nor respond to Kirkpatrick's comments. A link to his full response is in the description below. Burleson, previously, inspired by the testimony of David Grusch, said he thought some UFOs could be angels from another dimension, messengers of God. Seriously. Ogles and Burchett were the only ones to actually acknowledge both my question and Kirkpatrick's comments about a group of UFO activists duping Congress. Ogles replied, "The Biden administration has failed to be transparent on nearly every front. Based on the classified briefings I have attended with other members of Congress, it appears that there are serious national security concerns that must be addressed. Mr. Kirkpatrick is entitled to his own opinion, but for now, I will continue to press for answers to the questions members of Congress and the American people have." Burchett replied, "We have video proof and pilots chasing these things. So who's really being duped? My colleagues and I have talked to multiple pilots who have seen objects doing things the human body can't withstand. I have nothing personal against Kirkpatrick, but we have lots of evidence and testimony from a lot of reputable sources on this." Testimony from a lot of reputable sources? So who does Burchett consider a reputable source?
George Knapp, my buddy Jeremy Corbell.
Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, two long-standing members of this group of paranormal activists. Corbell and Knapp have a long history of promoting fake and false UFO stories. Burchett, who believes evidence of flying saucers is in the Bible, and that the literal devil is trying to stop UFO disclosure, continues to lead a congressional paranormal snipe hunt on the taxpayer's dime. Kirkpatrick's final Pentagon report, which he says will reveal more uncomfortable truths, will be released to Congress and the public very soon.